Ever get that, like, nagging feeling deep down that something's trying to tell you something? You know, those gut feelings, or those times you could swear your dreams are trying to send a message.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving deep. We're going into the world of Carl G. Jung and this amazing book he wrote, Man and His Symbols, to try and decode those mysterious whispers coming from inside us.
It's funny you should say whispers, because Jung really believed our unconscious mind, it isn't just some empty space up there.
Right.
He saw it more like this bustling world, just brimming with meaning. And the way it speaks to us, the language it uses, symbols.
So it's not just random chaos down there. It's like our unconscious is actually trying to communicate, but it's using this whole other language we're not fluent in.
Exactly. And Jung argued that of all the ways we experience this language, dreams, they're our most direct line to this symbolic world.
But dreams can be so strange. How do we even begin to make sense of them?
Right, and that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because unlike a road sign, with its clear meaning, symbols, they're much more fluid.
Okay.
For example, let's take the simple image of a snake. A dream dictionary, it might always say, danger, watch out.
Right.
But Jung would urge us to go deeper. He'd ask, what does a snake represent to you personally?
So it's personal. Like if you're a herpetologist, dreaming of a snake might not be a bad thing.
Exactly. Jung believed that unlocking that personal meaning, that's the key to understanding the message behind the symbol. He actually uses the example of a cross in the book, just a simple shape. But think about it, it's loaded with different potential meanings.
Yeah, definitely.
To someone who's grieving, it might represent loss. But for a theologian, it could signify redemption. Same symbol, completely different interpretations depending on the person.
Okay, that makes sense. Our experiences shape how we see things, even in our dreams. But then how do we move beyond just those personal interpretations? Is there something, I don't know, bigger connecting these symbols?
That's where Jung's theory of archetypes comes in. He believed that beneath those personal symbols, there are these universal inborn patterns of thought and behavior. You can almost think of them like
Blueprints.
Yeah, like blueprints for those classic characters we see in myths and stories, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man. They're hardwired into us.
Okay, so these archetypes, they're like pre-installed apps on our phones. We don't even realize they're there, but they're influencing how we think and act.
Precisely. And Jung gives some great examples in Man and His Symbols. For the hero, he points to Theseus, bravely facing the Minotaur in that labyrinth.
Right.
For the trickster, always stirring things up, there's the Monkey King from Chinese mythology. And who could forget those wise mentor figures like Chiron the Centaur, guiding heroes like Achilles?
So these figures, they aren't just characters in stories. They're reflections of these deeper patterns within us all. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. And understanding these archetypes can give us incredible insights into our own lives and our relationships.
So we've got these archetypal characters, kind of like living rent-free in our unconscious, shaping how we see the world. That's a lot to wrap our heads around. But how does knowing this actually play out in our everyday lives? Like, what's a practical use of all this?
Well, one way is to look at our relationships. Ever notice how some friendships just naturally fall into those classic archetypal pairings, like the hero and the mentor.
Oh, totally. You've got that one friend who's always pushing the limits, taking risks, the classic hero type. And then there's that other friend, the one you go to for advice, all wisdom, and experience, the mentor.
Exactly. And Jung would say recognizing those archetypal patterns can really help us navigate those relationships with more, awareness. We can start to see the roles we tend to play and how those roles kind of interact with the people around us.
So instead of getting frustrated when our hero friend acts impulsively, we can see it as part of their archetypal pattern. And hey, maybe even learn something from their fearlessness.
Precisely. And on the flip side, those hero friends, they might learn to appreciate the grounded wisdom of those mentor types in their lives.
This makes me think about how Jung saw modern society. Didn't he think we've kind of lost touch with those archetypal energies?
He absolutely did. He argued that modern society, with all its emphasis on rationality and logic, has kind of sidelined these unconscious forces.
So it's like we're trying to navigate life with only half the tools, right? We've got this whole rich symbolic language inside us, but we're so busy trying to be rational, we've forgotten how to speak it.
And Jung believed that's a big reason why there's so much, meaninglessness and fragmentation today. He even saw it reflected in the art, the literature, even the neuroses of his time.
Which brings us to one of Jung's most, intriguing, maybe even a little intimidating concepts. The shadow.
Ah, yes, the shadow. Now we're getting to the good stuff.
Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows down there in our unconscious, is it? There's this darker side, this shadow self we tend to, well, ignore or even repress.
Exactly. The shadow, it represents those parts of ourselves that we just deem unacceptable, undesirable even, the parts we try to hide from the world, maybe even from ourselves.
So those negative thoughts we have about ourselves, the envy, the jealousy, the anger, those are all whispers from our shadow self trying to make itself known.
Precisely. And Jung's insight was that repressing those aspects, it doesn't make them disappear. They can fester in our unconscious and, well, lead to bigger problems if we don't acknowledge them.
So it's not about pretending the shadow doesn't exist or like trying to banish it completely.
Not at all. Jung actually believed that true wholeness, it comes from integrating our shadow, not trying to eliminate it. It's about recognizing those darker impulses, understanding where they come from, and finding, healthier ways to express them.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Integrate our shadow. It sounds kind of terrifying, to be honest.
Well, that's where this idea of individuation comes in. Remember how we were talking about dreams having this overall purpose? Jung believed they're guiding us toward wholeness, toward becoming more complete and balanced individuals. And that process of becoming whole, of integrating all parts of ourselves, the light and the shadow, well, that's individuation.
So it's a journey. It's a process, like self-discovery.
Exactly. And like any good journey, it often starts with, as Jung put it, a call to adventure.
A call to adventure, like a literal adventure.
Yeah.
Should I be booking a plane ticket somewhere?
Not necessarily. Jung used that term more metaphorically, to describe those moments in life that disrupt those comfy illusions we have about ourselves. It forces us to confront the unconscious. It could be a major life change, a loss, even just a period of questioning, anything that shakes us out of our routine and forces us to look inward.
So like those times when life throws a curveball and we're kind of forced to reevaluate who we are and what we really want, those moments can actually be opportunities for growth.
Precisely. Jung believed that it's often in those moments of crisis, when those old ways of being just don't work anymore, that we're most open to those messages from the unconscious. The symbols in our dreams, those archetypal patterns playing out around us.
Okay, so it's like when things fall apart, that's when we have the chance to put ourselves back together in a way that's, I don't know, more real, more whole. That's actually kind of empowering.
Absolutely. And that's where the real growth and transformation can happen.
So facing those challenges, those calls to adventure we talked about,
Yeah.
it's like stepping into the unknown, right? Entering a kind of wilderness. And it makes me think about Jung's fascination with art, especially modern art. Didn't he see that as kind of a reflection of this journey into the unconscious?
Absolutely. Jung saw modern art as this mirror, almost. It reflected the anxieties, the yearning for something more, that search for meaning that he felt really defined modern people. He thought artists, often without even realizing it, were tapping into these same archetypal energies, that symbolic language that we've been talking about.
So those abstract shapes and colors you see in modern art, they're not just random like splatters of paint. They're actually speaking to us on a deeper level, maybe even tapping into that collective unconscious.
Precisely. Jung believed that engaging with art, whether we're creating it ourselves or just experiencing it, can be a powerful tool for this whole individuation thing. It can help us connect with those unconscious parts of ourselves and maybe, I don't know, find meaning in a world that often feels pretty fragmented.
It's like when you're standing in front of an abstract piece, and even if you can't really explain it, you just feel something. It resonates.
Exactly. That's the thing about symbols. They bypass that rational mind and speak right to our emotions, our intuition, that unconscious part of us.
This whole dive into Jung has been amazing. But before we wrap up, I'm curious, how did all this affect Jung personally? Did he think he had it all figured out?
Jung, he was very aware of his own shadow, his own flaws, never claimed to have all the answers.
So no guru on a mountaintop, just a guy trying to figure things out like the rest of us.
Exactly. And that's kind of reassuring, don't you think? It's not about being perfect, but embracing the journey. The ups, the downs, the whole shebang.
And who better to guide us than, well, ourselves, our own unconscious, sending us those little hints, those symbols, those synchronicities. This has been eye-opening. So to everyone listening, pay attention to those dreams, be open to the unexpected, and remember, you're on your own path, becoming who you're meant to be. Remember to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Daniel David Allen YouTube channel, where RoboCast is posted every weekday. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.